In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
You know, we gathered here yesterday at the same time to remember a meal, the Last Supper. Today, we gather just 24 hours later to remember an execution. A lot has changed in 24 hours. Jesus' story has taken a really dark turn. Now, I said yesterday that in offering this meal, Jesus was trying to teach his disciples something very important. I said that a meal, among other things, a meal signifies our dependence, signifies that we're not in control, signifies our limitations. To eat a meal, we depend on farmers, truck drivers, people working at the grocery store. To eat a meal, we depend on the world around us, the soil, the sun, the water. To eat a meal is also, of course, to recognize that we depend on God, that it is by God's grace that we live and move. How about these? Now, if a meal subtly suggests our dependence, if a meal quietly whispers, remember your limitations, an execution screams it out loud with merciless clarity. The crucifixion forces us to admit this lack of control, these limitations on our lives. And especially the crucifixion of Jesus really brings it home. Even if we live well, even if we do the right things, even if we're a nice person, even if we're faithful to God, we're not in control. Things may not go well for us. Now, of course, in many ways, today, April 10th, 2020, we don't need that many reminders of the fact that we're not in control, that things can go badly for us, do we? We're living in the midst of a global pandemic. We're worshiping online and by phone, not because we prefer this format, but because we have to do this to try and keep ourselves and each other safe. The coronavirus, like the crucifixion, reminds us of our limitations, of our dependence, of the fact that we don't have all the power that we wish we had. Being a disciple of Jesus, there's no guarantee of success. There's no guarantee of joy. There's no guarantee of comfort. Indeed, we learn when we really pay attention to the cross, and it's easy for the cross just to become another religious symbol that we're so used to, but think about what the cross is. It's another reminder that being a disciple of Jesus doesn't even mean that we get to live a nice long life. Jesus was almost certainly younger than I am when he was crucified. Discipleship is about accepting and realizing and facing with honesty the limitations that we have, the fact that we're dependent. Discipleship is about recognizing that we depend on God's grace already, and then turning and trying to live our life as a reflection of God's grace. And again, we have to be really clear and honest here. Let's remember that even God incarnate, Jesus himself, was not able to avoid limitations. We Christians say that Jesus is God in the flesh, and yet he struggled to be heard, he struggled to be understood, he struggled to actually perform his ministry. And indeed, when he finally was understood, when his message was actually beginning to land, people were actually starting to listen to him, that's when those in power decided that they needed to quiet this person forever. Now we know, and we will get to this tomorrow, that they weren't quite as successful in quieting Jesus as they hoped. But nevertheless, the message here is clear. Even when we try to do what is best and follow God's grace and live as a reflection of God's grace, there's no promise that it's going to be easy. In fact, if anything, there's the reason to think that it will be harder. Recognizing our limitations, accepting that we're not in control, is difficult but necessary, because it's about being honest with who we are and the world that we live in. Things are going to be tough indeed. We see that in Jesus' life. We see that in the lives that are being lost around us today, and all those who are suffering today. The cross teaches us something absolutely essential about what it means to really be a disciple of Jesus. In the cross, we hear that we must deny the illusion of self-sufficiency and instead take up our cross and follow Jesus into a life lived as a reflection of God's grace.